brother named Ish, making mad music with.
Hey guys, welcome to Frank's Tech Help. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Traxxas Rustler 4x4 VXL, and I'm going to cover some of the basics on how I did my lighting and also how I managed to squeeze in my fans and heatsink for the ESC and the motor. And so go ahead and pop the cover off here, and then I'll get some light on it. I just wanted to show you the basic gist of what my lighting looks like. This lights up the body really nicely, and it casts enough light on the ground when you're driving it to be able to see. I did previously have the tail lights and the headlights installed, but I removed those just because it kept getting bashed up. So I'm going to remove the top here, and you can see the placement of my LEDs there. So let me switch on the lights here real quick. Okay, so just to show you what I've done here, on the front side, I ran the lights up through. This is just a little LED light strip. Get them on eBay, wherever, Amazon, and they're rated for 8 volts up to 12 volts. So this worked perfect for this car. I can run the 2C or the 3C battery with them, no problem whatsoever. And as far as the placement goes, I actually did use some super glue. You see kind of in the front there, just a touch. This did have an adhesive back, but it'll never hold, so I just did a little touch super glue. And then also on the back here, I did it on the cover of the spur and pinion gear setup, so I can actually still remove this. I just remove those 3 screws, lift this up, it pops out. This wire allows it to fall out of the way. And then there's an override switch right there. Now, this is kind of where we get into other things. This is not a waterproof switch, so it's nice, you know, it's nice to have a switch that's hooked directly into the battery, but this is not a waterproof switch, so I did have to create an override. And while you're viewing the wiring inside of this car, you'll notice my E-shrink in various places. Those are all the permanent connections. The only thing that's not permanent is the wiring right here from the battery terminals. And the reason for this is because I didn't want to cut through this 10 gauge wire completely. Now, had I cut all the way through to wire this plug in, yeah, I would have used the E-shrink, you know, around it and sealed it up well. But because I didn't want to cut through that, yes, I did wrap it with red and black electrical tape respectively, and used a red and black zip tie that holds this in. But the purpose of this is strictly for lighting. So when my lights are on, if I'm going to go running in the snow, the water, mud bogging or whatever, I could just switch this off, not a problem. But water is going to get into this, and it will, you know, you're looking at possibly shorting the system or whatever. So if the lights are on, that's what this plug is for. This is a manual override. So it comes straight out of the battery, comes into right there. So whenever I'm running through the water, mud bogging, you know, doing whatever, and the car is going to be wet, all I have to do is unplug that. Now the same thing for the fans on the ESC and the motor as well. So I'll cover those real quick. And I got to tell you, this was a tight squeeze on this motor. Let me actually show you here real quick what I was working with initially. Alright, see if you guys can see this properly, but so this is what it originally looked like. Of course, the wires right here they have a little tie down, a lockdown pin that keeps them down into place. So I had released it here, and I was trying to figure out where I was going to place the fan for the motor, and I did previously have an ESC fan already in place as far as that goes. So I picked up a dual set of Integy fans, and I thought this was going to go in combination with what I already had here. I thought it was going to fit on here, but as it turns out, you can actually see from there that it absolutely did not. So this fan, it did, there are 2 of them, and it did come on a riser, just show you right there. So that the fans were attached to this riser, the riser was attached to the heatsink. And since these fans were already wired together into one plug, I decided to go ahead and remove my old fan, ESC fan, and use the double cable as it was, and I ended up having to splice the wires regardless. But so that's kind of what the setup looks like right now as you see it. And I did take special care that when I placed the fan, I didn't want my motor wires to touch the heatsink. So I used a couple of zip ties right there and placed them strategically to add a buffer in between the heatsink, the motor, and the wires as far as that goes. So just take that into consideration. And so I did take a zip tie, cut it down, and then took another one and then kind of super glued it to the end of that plug, but I made a little pull. You don't want to pull on the wires, you know, in the raw form like that, because it's eventually going to break them. So I just created a little clip right there. So I can give you a little close-up of that, how I did that. So instead of having to tug on those wires or use tweezers or whatever, you just grab it like that and it unplugs. So on the overall, it is fairly important, especially on the Rustler 4x4 VXL, to have cooling fans, because if you're running a 2S battery, it's not quite as bad as far as the heating issue goes, but once you get up into 3S, you are definitely going to have overheating issues. It's going to drain the battery fairly quickly. So any type of cooling you can get in here is going to be good as far as that goes. So yeah, E-Shrink is your friend. I use it pretty much on every project, everything that I do. You know, as you go a step further, you can solder the wires, solder those points together, then put your E-Shrink over the top of it and heat it up with your heat gun to shrink it down. So one other thing you'll notice, that where the heatsink riser, the fan sits on top, I have a zip tie down here. This kept popping off, and part of the reason is because I have my switch right there. I think it's putting too much pressure because I used a couple of pieces of double-sided tape in there to kind of wedge it in with a little touch of super glue to lock that in. So this really takes some punishment. I mean, I've dropped, you know, jumped this thing probably 15 feet in the air or whatever, and it slammed on the hood, the whatever, you know. And this fan did come off once, hence the reason I put the zip tie down, just to make sure it doesn't pop off again. But that was only once, so this is really just taking a pounding, and everything has stayed into place. So that's kind of a key element when you wire all this stuff. Now, one little extra tip, if you're using zip ties, you know, I use just a little pair of wire clippers, you know, such as this right here, mini wire clippers. The problem with these is that it doesn't clip the zip ties all the way. It does leave a little nub, and it's kind of sharp from where you've cut it off. I would suggest a pair of fingernail clippers, or you can use like a soldering iron just to touch the end of that to make it smooth. But if you use wire clippers, whatever, to snip the ends of these, they will be sharp. So just take note to not have this pointed towards any wires. And I did take the extra care there to make sure that all my zip ties are pointed out, like that one right there. Make sure that they're pointed away from other wires, because after a while, that friction, if they're sharp, it will dig into the other wires and it'll short something out eventually. Anyway, this is my tip on installing a couple of things on the Traxxas Rustler 4x4 VXL. As always, I hope this video helped you guys out. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching Frank's Tech Help. Peace.
Yo, check it. God gave skills to a brother named Ish. Make it